Hi, and welcome to today's episode where we are going to be talking about how to repurpose your purpose. This is something that's been on my mind quite a lot lately, and I have a feeling it might resonate with some of you. So, I'm in my early 30s, and I find myself getting struck by those panics, the ones that kind of come under the am I behind umbrella. The things like, should I own a house by now? Should I be really settled into my dream career? Should I have had a baby like yesterday? And in all honesty, these thoughts don't come to me as often as they used to. Well, I cover more of that later. But when they do, they kind of pop up like an unexpected bill. They are unwelcome and annoying. But something I've realised is that whenever I actually kind of dig beneath this panic of am I behind, the answer's never yes. It's always just that I'm on a different path and I'm on my own path. And maybe that's why it all feels so uncertain sometimes, just because I haven't walked it before. So today I'm going to talk about how to kind of redefine and repurpose your purpose when it comes to those more sort of traditional purposes. Because quite often those traditional milestones aren't the answer for everybody. Okay, so if we look at this traditional path, the one where you're supposed to find your dream job and settle down, buy a house, have a family, that can definitely not feel relevant to a lot of people. It can feel quite off-putting or unnecessary, something that they don't want, something that they're not working towards. And that's not to say that those things aren't a beautiful purpose to have, because they very much can be and they very much are for a lot of people. But what I've sometimes noticed is that we kind of treat them as if they are the purpose, when quite often they're more sort of milestones for a lot of people. And also what becomes very tricky about these things is that quite often they can be very out of our control. More and more people are having to live with family until they're a lot older than they expected. The job market is honestly an absolute nightmare right now. And when we look at housing, I mean, the house prices for one are crazy. The requirements to be able to get onto the housing ladder can be very unattainable for a lot of people. So these things that are quite often fed to us as providing purpose or being a purpose become something that for a lot of people don't feel achievable, and they become unattainable. And when you can't reach these things, you're kind of sat in this constant state of comparison. And when you're stuck in this state of comparison, you find yourself quite often trying to bridge the gap between where you think you should be and where you actually are. And that just doesn't provide a positive grounding foundation to work from when you're trying to determine what you're here to do. In my own personal experience, I often find that these milestones are things that we maybe feel like we should achieve by a certain age, for example, rather than actually being something we necessarily want to have achieved by that age. And it becomes more around like we feel like we should do it because we've been told we should. But what if there is another way? Also, can we just have a moment for Oliver snoozing away next to me? Something that's really helped me to redefine what purpose feels like in my life is to shift the view from massive milestones, huge achievements, to more sort of daily practices and ways of living. And this probably sounds a little bit vague, but I'm going to explain. For me, these daily choices can look like spending time with loved ones, incorporating more movement into my life where I can, whether that's walking, going to the gym, or just dancing around the kitchen, which is something that I do a little bit too often, probably. I've found a lot of purpose through writing, through reading, whether that's for fun or learning something new. I've also been practicing piano more recently, learning a language, and also sharing more online, which has helped me to really kind of stretch my creative side, which I haven't really tapped into for a long time. And these aren't massive big milestones that I would, be expecting a lovely card to come through the post to say well done for doing. But they help me to live in a way that's more kind of meaningful and ultimately purposeful. They're the kind of building blocks that support that. And what I'm doing by defining and practicing these building blocks is kind of shifting my purpose from being a destination to just being a continuous and consistent practice. And if I'm honest, that takes so much pressure off of those huge milestones. it kind of shifts the narrative to being that when your purpose is something that you're showing up to daily, you're not constantly just waiting to arrive somewhere or really bending over backwards to get yourself to that point. You're already there and you're already like living it. And with this mindset shift, you can apply it to those big milestones too. So for example, when it comes to career, instead of seeing it as something you've maybe failed at or that you're stuck on, you can kind of view it as like an ongoing project, an ongoing transformation. It's something that you're allowed to evolve and you're allowed to pivot and change direction. As mentioned earlier, with these big milestones, it can be quite difficult in a lot of ways because a lot of things are out of your control when it comes to these. So to get a little bit more personal, I was absolutely one of those people who was like, by 30, I'm going to have done this, I'm going to have done that, I'll have achieved this, and I'll have this and have that. And when I actually turned 30, I didn't really have many, if any, of those things locked down at all. And an element of the reason why was because when I was 27, I lost my mum quite suddenly. And if I'm honest, my life kind of went off track around that time, and not in a way of like I went off the rails or anything like that. It wasn't crazy, but it was in this more kind of subtle and stagnant way, which meant that making progress on any of those massive life milestones felt very unachievable. And this particularly showed up for me in a career sense. And this kind of taught me that those things that we're told that we should achieve and that should be our purpose quite often are things that we just don't have as much control over as we would maybe hope. But the things that we do have control over, so showing up for yourself, these daily practices, those are what can really help build that solid foundation to define your purpose from. So I have stopped aging my goals. There's no more, by the time I'm 35, by the time I'm 40, I'm not doing that anymore. Because life doesn't work on timelines. And honestly, I think you are kind of setting yourself up for failure if you do that. It's definitely best just to live at your own pace. One thing that I did want to touch on, because I think it does relate to how I'm kind of redefining my purpose, is around the community and what you can do to give back. I've always had this pull towards wanting to give back. I was a volunteer for various charities and have also done some volunteer coaching for young people, but I'm also a big believer in that you can't pour from an empty cup. You've got to build your own capacity first. There's this quote that I keep seeing everywhere at the moment, which is, if you want a village, you have to be a villager. And I do love that because it kind of shows that building community is reciprocal, it's not transactional. But as an introverted homebody, I'm trying to work out how I can make that work and what being a villager looks like for me. And I think that's partly why I'm sharing more online now and creating stuff that I hope resonates with people and I hope helps people. I know that I'm definitely kind of looking at it as a way to reach a wider community and over time hopefully developing something that gives back. So if you are somebody who does see value and purpose in community involvement, I guess this is just to say that you can definitely work out ways to do it in a way that hopefully will suit you and that your contribution doesn't have to look like everybody else's. So if I am to kind of bring this all together, I really believe that your purpose has to be like a living, breathing thing, and kind of seeing it as something that continuously transforms with you as you move through your life will ultimately help you live a much more supported and meaningful and purposeful life. It definitely takes courage to step away from that more traditional path. But I think that one of the most human things that we can do for ourselves is to allow ourselves to be who we feel most aligned with and evolve in that way. Right now, I'm very happy with the things that I have going on that are kind of helping me work towards a wider and more meaningful purpose for myself. But I'm also very aware that these things are going to change and grow over time and most likely expand, and that's what's one of the most exciting things. You can turn your purpose into something that grows with you. So if you're in your 30s or any age really, to be honest. As I said, we're not aging things anymore. So yeah, if you are an age and you're feeling that panic of, am I behind? I'm just here to let you know that you're not. You are exactly where you're supposed to be, and you're just on your own path. I asked people over on Threads what purpose means to them, and I would love to do the same here because I got some really interesting answers. So what does purpose mean to you? Have you found yourself redefining it over time? Let me know in the comments. And that is it. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and also Oliver, although he has been asleep for the whole time, which is not a good review. But yeah, thank you for being here and watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.